Hello and welcome to the Soulful Deep Dive podcast with me, Vida. And I am here with my wonderful friend today who changed my life, Donna Carroll, also known as Donna Akasha. She is a co-founder of Love Consciousness and creator of Activate Superconscious Method. With over 20 years experience in facilitation and consciousness work, she helps people to release emotional blocks and subconscious patterns to reconnect with their authentic selves. Bridging science and spirituality, Donna teaches quantum space holding and trains facilitators worldwide to create coherent fields for healing and transformation. Her passion is soul embodiment, authenticity, and empowerment, living spiritually throughout everyday presence and integrity. So, welcome, Donna.
Thank you. It's so lovely to connect with you.
And thank you so much for being here. It's really important that you were actually my first guest on my podcast because what your work has been absolutely life-changing and it's evolving all of the time. And particularly when it comes to things like quantum space holding, which is what we'll be talking about today. So before we start today, I would love for you to just really open up a really nice basic space, which I usually do myself on the podcast. But as I've got the master at work here today, I would love for you to do that for us today, just so that people can get a little taster of what it's all about. So before we deep dive into the conversation, if you're happy to guide us through, we can
Yeah,
open up
yeah, I
some
can open
space.
up a nice little space. I guess I'll say to the watchers, if they want to join in, and just follow the instructions. So yeah, so I guess what we'll do is I invite you to just gently close your eyes. And we can just begin just by taking a couple of nice big deep breaths in. And just dropping into the body. It's really, really important to be anchored into the body, to be grounded. And then as you breathe, I invite you to bring all of your focus, all of your attention into your heart space. Sometimes it helps to place a hand on the heart. And then I wonder if you can imagine that you can breathe through your heart space. So in the next inhale, imagine pulling your breath through your heart, filling your heart all the way through to the back. And as you exhale, imagining that your heart is beginning to open and expand. Now we're going to give our hearts a little helping hand. So I invite you on the next breath to hold the intention, I breathe in the frequency of love. So imagine breathing in the feeling of love into your heart, filling your heart with the feeling of love. This really amplifies, opening the heart. And on the exhale, visualizing, seeing, feeling, or simply just knowing that your heart is now beginning to open and expand. On the next inhale, I invite you to breathe in the frequency of joy. So let's breathe in that joy, feel that joy, fill your heart with joy. Joy is our natural state of being. And as we exhale, we expand even further, really expanding in our heart fields now, activating in the heart and really beginning to expand within and all around us. On the next breath in, let's breathe in the frequency of peace. So as you breathe in peace into your heart, I really invite you to just check in with your body again, making sure you're grounded in your body, and on the exhale, just relaxing down, down, down into the body, dissolving any stress you might be holding. Now we're now going to just pull through the heart up into the head. This is how we create the heart-brain coherence. So I invite you on the next breath to breathe in through the heart. Big breath in, and imagine that you're pulling the breath up, up, up through the neck into the center of the forehead, wakening up the intuition, but also connecting the heart energy and the brain. Using your physical eyes, if you could imagine looking up to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. Just do this a few times. And what you're doing is you're asking both left and right hemispheres of the brain to sync, to communicate, to work as one. Do this a few times while breathing normally. And when you are ready, just pulling that breath from the head, from the brain, back down into the heart. And on the exhale, expanding out, out, out. Now, you're beginning to create a beautiful coherence field. And coherence is so important when creating quantum space. We want to be creating from coherence, which is the unified field, and not from the program, from the inverted or polarized field. So on the next breath, as we breathe in and we begin to expand out, we're going to imagine that we're expanding out, 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 all the way to the edge of our own sovereign field. And when you intuitively feel like you're at the edge, you're going to place a beautiful, loving, soft boundary all around your field of energy. And we're just going to gently hold the intention that our highest level of consciousness, our highest self that serves our highest purpose, the aspect of us that is fully 100% in alignment with the unified field of love, of unity, just wraps around this gentle, loving boundary that we are creating. And only that serves our highest purpose has permission to enter our space today. We just ask that the coherence that we are now creating just brings any distortions, any chaotic energy into alignment. As within, so without, as above, so below, as we begin to align fully and completely through all bodies, through all levels that we are, to the unified field of love, of one. So just spend a moment just breathing, feeling that coherence, feeling how it creates more presence, more grounding in the body, how it creates a quieter mind, more focus. And just enjoy that for just a moment. And in your own time, when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes and I welcome you back into the space.
Oh, I feel so much more grounded already. Thank you so
It
much for that.
does. It's just that's so simple. That's like the basic first step, if
Yeah,
you like. And it is simply coherence,
yeah,
you know. And I mean, I can absolutely tell the difference
yeah,
instantly. It's almost like you don't even realize you're partly maybe in a little bit of chaotic energy until you
yeah,
do the technique, and then you're like, oh, that's better. And you feel really present suddenly,
yeah,
clear. So yeah.
yeah. It's like, oh, there I am. And it's like your soul speaking rather than all the chaotic. You mentioned the word programming in that as well. Can you explain to our listeners and viewers what that means when we talk about being in coherence rather than running off the programming?
Absolutely. I mean, it's super fascinating and it's kind of at the basis or the foundation, if you like, of the teaching
Mm.
of Activate Superconscious or ASM is that we are living in two fields, two completely different fields of energy. One is a coherence field. So this is why creating that coherence field is so powerful. That is our more organic. We are more connected into that field of oneness, our soul, our higher levels of consciousness, all of that good stuff. And then we have the programmed field of energy. Now, this is a field that is made up of consciousness that is not so coherent. So
Mm.
if you imagine a coherence field being made up of geometry that's sets of three,
Mm.
so you have like a masculine and a feminine aspect, and then you might have the source aspect. And so it's renewing. It doesn't need anything from outside of itself. Whereas a programmed or polarized consciousness is made of two opposing parts. It's separated consciousness, which isn't good or bad necessarily. We had to experience that in order to have an experience of being separate,
Mm.
of being separate from each other, of being separate from the outside world, because, truly I believe that's our training ground.
Yeah.
That's how we learn how to be human, to come into responsibility, to then get access to, our soul and our
Yeah.
gifts. Because honestly, we need responsibility to get
Yes.
access to our higher powers, because what we are in essence is absolutely infinite
Mm.
and magical. And, the gifts that we have are creational gifts. And so it's part of the training, if you like. It's part of all of my training now to understand the difference between the two.
So tell me a little bit about the training, because your training has evolved so much since we first met as well, and it always is evolving, which is exactly how it should be. As we learn and evolve, I imagine as you learn and evolve, your training learns and evolves too, and that sends out that ripple effect. So what is it that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I guess what I would just want to say with the evolution part is that,
Mm.
firstly, I truly believe that our soul and the gifts and the things that we are going to bring forward. First of all, the soul is trying to teach you what
Yeah,
that is. And so
exactly.
the journey begins with you. So
Yeah.
even when, I remember when I first was introduced to what I'm calling quantum space creation or quantum space holding. So that is what the course is. And it was super fascinating because it was around 5 years ago. I was part of a different course, and the facilitator was talking about this absolutely amazing, almost like alchemical magic, if you like, that had been hidden from humanity. And he started going into details about what that involved. And I was watching him and I was like, I know this. How do I know this already? And obviously, what I realised partially was my kind of, I guess at that point in time, 15 years experience in hypnotherapy, which is a form of kind of creational alchemy, if you like.
Yeah.
And so I felt like the hypnotherapy that I'd learned was partially why everything that he was speaking about I already knew. And the other thing that was really fascinating is that at that point in time, I knew that one day I was going to be teaching this or passing this information on, because I knew it and I'd never even learned it. And I thought that is super fascinating. However, what I do have to say is that I completely understand why I then had to go through multiple years of going deep into creating my
Mm.
own quantum spaces, because I didn't always get it right. I
Mm.
mean, I never ever got it wrong in the sense of that, that anything bad happened. It wasn't like that. It was just like I was sometimes creating them too strong.
Yeah.
These fields that were so powerful, I wasn't letting anything in. And
Yeah.
then wondering why, like, let's say you go on a night out and there's no one there. you
Yeah.
know, it's honestly, it's absolutely fascinating. So I really, really am grateful for the time and my own exploration with it, because each little piece that
Mm.
I added in or took away taught me something else about how actually amazing and magical it is to play with these creations, if you like. So yeah, so it's that's what I'm bringing forward, and it's taken me, I'd say, the 5 years, and particularly I can see now on reflection, the last 2 years have really prepared me for this. And that was kind of having to go really, really into the whole shadow side of things and clear
Yeah.
out the root stuff, because if you're going to be working with higher dimensional energy, and that's what this says, you need to be really grounded in your body.
Yes.
And so because you're holding that field through your body.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I can see that's why I had to go down. I had to descend over the last couple of years. And then coming out the other side of it, it's like, right, it's time to get into the quantum space holding now. So yeah, so I'm really excited.
So, for anybody who's listening and is really intrigued, can you confirm and explain to them when you said about sometimes initially when you were going through the process of it or getting it wrong or having to go down before coming out the other side? Um, is it a safe process for people to go through, and what can they expect from the process? Do they have to go really deep within themselves to clear a lot of stuff? And what's that process look like? Do people have to go through a hard time or not so much? Or
So I mean, again, it's all in the creation.
mm.
So I guess part of my I don't even like the word awakening journey anymore. There's lots and lots of terms that I think
Yeah,
people sort of use in ways that, it's kind of maybe lost its meaning. So for me, the journey of evolution is about becoming more aware.
yeah,
It's about becoming more and more aware of self.
yeah,
And again, like I said, there's two different fields of creation we're playing in, and the programmed version of us is not actually the authentic version of us. Yeah. And
yeah,
so every single one of us is subject to that. If you're here on the earth, you've been through programming, you've created personas and conditions and ideas about who you are. And a lot of these things are based on protection and
yeah,
survival. And so we had to survive. Even going to school is
yeah,
like a game of survival. Like, am I fitting in? Am I going to be rejected? I don't want to be, the outsider. I want to fit in. And so we create all of this stuff. Yeah.
mm,
And when we begin to become more aware, part of that awareness is becoming aware of what truly authentically is us and
yeah,
what is the defense. And the trouble is with defense is there's normally little wounds. You wouldn't need defense if there wasn't a wound or a
yeah,
fear. So when you begin to work in this way, you do begin to become more aware.
yeah,
And the moment you become more aware and you can see defense, it's only a matter of time before that defense has to come down,
yeah,
because you can't normally see it. That's why it's called shadow, yeah. But once you see it, you can't move forward with it. You just
yeah.
simply can't. And so it's only a matter of time. I always say being aware of a wound or being aware of a shadow or a program or a defense is the first step in it coming down.
So is that
Yeah.
talking about, for example, the ego when we talk about our ego? Because obviously our ego plays into that a lot. And it's not that ego is bad, but I know, and it can actually even and has probably, like you say, protected us, saved us, made us feel safe, because that's why we create all of these personas and programming and our beliefs in the first place. But is it kind of, because some people talk about I want to shed the ego, but it's not really about that. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on that?
I mean, when we say the ego as well, there's multiple layers to
Mm,
that. You know, again, it's all the different masks and personas that we might, the different hats, you know, that we create to navigate. And there's no right or wrong. This is everything that I teach, everything that I present is all about coming back to self.
Mm,
So it's kind of like everything has been useful.
yeah.
Everything has served you. Everything is a part of your own personal creation.
Yeah.
And that's once we begin to realize that, it's like, oh, okay, so it was me. It was, yes, it was you all along. And so when we begin to look at all the different aspects of the ego, then again, this is the parts of us that are largely in separation. Of course, we are going to have a personality. We're here to be human.
Yeah,
Yeah?
exactly. It's not about being
You know,
perfect.
but can we have a personality that is based on who we truly
Mm,
want to be?
mm,
Or is our personality based on how do I fit in? How
yeah.
do I continue to be approved of?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I avoid being judged? And so we shrink ourselves, we shrink our energy, we
Mm,
shrink our authentic expression. You
yeah.
know, we are basically, we've been living in a programmed world where we are suffering largely from the main condition, I would say, is repression.
Mm,
And so we've repressed, we've shut away, we've exiled all of these parts of us, and that is why we can't come into wholeness and healing. So going back to what you said, because it is really important about,
mm,
you know, does someone have to go through a deep process as part of like doing the quantum space creation? The way that I work with everyone now is that, and the way that I try to encourage, I can't tell anybody else what to do or what their path is. It's really
mm,
important. I
yeah.
really respect sovereignty. I try
Yeah.
to align to universal law as much as I can. But what I have done is I have gone deep. And I have made a lot of the mistakes, and I have maybe put myself through more than I necessarily had to.
Yeah.
And that way I can pass on the information. But the last 2 years, and the reason why I realize now that I had to wait, the
Mm,
divine timing and everything, is that the last 2 years, you know, was really kind of a little bit of a dark night of the soul, if you like. So it was really getting into those deeper layers, um, really clearing out the root. So we're talking like fear and shame and, you know, all of those icky kind of really dense emotions. But it's also really, really necessary, because it's the clearing of that that helps us be in the body. Being in the body means that we're grounded. If we're
mm.
grounded, we're creating the fields of energy through us, through our bodies, and you have the stability to hold those fields of energy. So that's why I realize now that part was so, so important. Yeah.
And is that why you decided to make a 12-month course? Because I remember when you first initially said 12 months, I thought, wow, that's a really long time, 12 months. So is that one of the reasons why? Because the participants would be doing a lot of really, really deep kind of shadow work, if you like, in order to be able to hold that kind of that space and that energy.
It's going to be monthly live sessions, so just one day a month, accompanied with online material, so the online course, but a lot of self practice,
Mm,
yeah, for each element. This is the type of course that does, if you want, you know, anybody can do it, don't get me wrong, but if you really, really want to make it work for you, if you really want to understand the magic in this, it does require the practice, the commitment, and the dedication to really get it right. And of course, that even starts off with very basic things like, do you have the ability to close down your busy mind? Do
mm.
you have the ability to focus? You know, do you have the ability to create coherence in your own field? These are such basic things, But without these basic things, you're not really creating from the right place. Yeah. And so each element is designed for individuals to be able to take it progressively, step by step, starting with the very basics, understanding the fundamentals, really, really getting the fundamentals in place so that we can then begin to create those more expanded, fields of energy, because that's what it is. To being able to move forward and really hold group fields. But the larger the group field that you are holding, the greater the stability you need to hold that field. So I've said this to you before, as you know, and I say it all the time. Everything that I do now is all about me reminding individuals that it's an inside job. I'm not here to tell you what your journey is. I'm not here to tell you the timing of when you're supposed to embody this or when you're supposed to release that. That has nothing to do with me. Yeah, that is between you and you. Yeah,
Yeah.
you by yourself. I'm just here to be a guide to pass on what I have learned, and to perhaps help you understand how you can make it a little bit easier. So in other words, I've made the mistakes so that maybe you don't have to, yeah?
And would you say that so we talked about it being for facilitators and people holding space, but because we're having to do a lot of the deep inner work, would you say that if someone wasn't holding group space or didn't feel ready enough to hold group space yet, but they just wanted to do it for the inner work, could they do that too?
Absolutely. I mean, so as I said, everything starts with yourself.
Mm.
If you cannot hold space for yourself, I'm sorry to be blunt here,
Yeah, so
then
true.
you've got no bloody business
Yeah,
holding space for anyone else. Yeah.
yeah,
And the problem is that we have been living in a very distorted reality, a polarized reality, a reality where, and by the way, I'm not judging anyone at all. We have all been in this, we've all played the game,
yeah,
but the reality where I'm the healer, I'm going to heal you, you know, or I'm the guru, I'm here to show you the way, and it's not really like that.
mm.
Yeah, it's not like that at all. I mean, that's really quite an insult, to an
To the
individual
person. Yeah, you're
feeling
taking their
that,
sovereignty away
that
almost,
is
you
their
know?
own, yeah, that is their
Yeah,
own, their own soul,
yeah,
infinite soul, intelligence, their own sovereignty, and their soul has their back
yeah,
and knows
exactly.
exactly when they're ready. Yeah. But we are also mirrors for each other. We're
Mm.
also designed to pull the right souls in at the right time when we're ready
Yeah,
for the next piece. And that might be, as we all know, we've all played this game, pulling the polarized souls in to show us our shadow, yeah?
yeah,
Or it might be to pull the more awakened aspects of ourselves in to show us the next part of our journey in evolution, yeah?
excellent. Yeah, I love it. And even though this is a 12-month course, do people have access to all the information forever? Because, like you were saying, sometimes you can't tell them the timing of it. So, if there's a part that maybe their soul's like, "Whoa, you're not quite ready for that yet," that they would be able to come back to it when they are, or keep working on certain aspects.
Yeah, I mean, the way that the course will be designed is that, what they gain from the course, they will keep that forever.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the course. I mean, the fundamentals of the course and the reason why it's a branch of ASM
Mm,
is that the fundamentals throughout what will be all the different branches of ASM, the fundamental teachings are the same.
mm,
The fundamental teachings are things like remembering what our body actually is as a technology. Yeah, remembering our soul, understanding the difference between programming and coherence, understanding the role of our heart, and the coherence between our heart and brain. So in other words, you're beginning to understand that this body that we're in is a full, sophisticated, intelligent system that has been created to stream the universe, your soul.
Mm.
Yeah, and so the fundamental teachings are the same. It's really going into understanding the basics of this stuff so that we can come into more soul embodiment.
Mm.
So soul embodiment's very different to being aware, because we can read a book and we can be intellectually aware of something, but we may not have embodied anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
soul embodiment is literally about getting into the body, turning the body, the technology back online so that we can utilize it in its fullest potential. It's a creative vessel.
I love that. And I'd love to clarify with you as well, just for anyone who's listening that's really like, I want to sign up. I really love the sound of all this. When you said it's a branch of ASM, do they have to do ASM before they do this
No,
course?
no,
Great.
no. The foundational, what I mean is the foundational teaching is the
Mm.
same across the
Yeah.
board. That's what makes it ASM. And then the area, if you like, is unique. So the original ASM is a form of quantum hypnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah. This branch is ASM, but it's quantum space creation and holding. So every aspect is a little bit different, but the one thing that they all have in common is we have to understand how to get into the body, how to ground in the body, how to create coherence.
So for people out there who are already holding space without this kind of training, um, why do you believe it's really important for people to go in and do this kind of training to really hold space? And what could be at risk if they didn't?
Okay. So first of all, what I want to say is I'm not of the school of thought that, how do I fit this into words? I'm not of the school of thought that, you're getting it wrong, you're doing
Yeah.
anything wrong, Again, that's very polarized consciousness. We've all played the game. We've all played the polarized game.
Yeah.
So any facilitator on the planet, at one point in time, if they aren't still doing this, they will be getting it wrong sometimes. Yeah, if you like. So it comes down to soul embodiment, I feel,
Mm.
right? It comes down to things like universal law, understanding karma, understanding things like the law of compensation. And basically, when we are facilitating, if we are not facilitating in a way that's in alignment to natural law, universal law, there's going to be a price to pay. Yeah. And that might simply mean that you're just creating something, another overlay in
Mm.
your program that you're then going to have to dismantle at some point. Yeah. But also experience the feedback loop of that creation. So, in other words, if I was to go in and I was to tell someone that I was healing them, and I was to use all of my force and all of my power and magic, if you like, to go in without really asking their higher consciousness if they're ready for that healing
Mm.
example. And I was to remove something, I might be doing them a major injustice. I
Yeah.
might be taking away a lesson that their soul had planned for them in order for them to come into deeper embodiment, deeper awareness, deeper understanding, remembrance. And so I've done an injustice to them, really, from a place of my own unconsciousness, thinking that I'm some kind of authority.
Mm.
Yeah. And I will probably have a little price to pay for that.
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
karmic
Absolutely.
price.
Yeah.
And so it's not really about, you're doing it wrong. It's about every little karmic debt that we creates a feedback loop. All polarized consciousness is a loop that creates a loop. So we're going to have to then re-experience that. And if that wasn't really in the best interest of the highest purpose, we also then have to experience a little bit of that. So we're always getting a little taste of our own medicine as a way of learning,
Yeah.
as a way of remembering. Oh, like I've shoved my hand in the fire now 10 times. Maybe I won't do it again, you know? And sometimes we have to learn the hard way because some of us are pretty stubborn, you know? I'm one of them.
So what if, so for any facilitators that are out there that are like, oh, hang on a minute, I don't know anything about quantum space holding, and I've been holding these spaces for people, you know, throughout the goodness of my heart, we're all there to help each other and help each other grow and learn. If they're a little bit worried now that, hang on a minute, what if I've not been doing it right and I've got some kind of bad karma to come back to me, or some kind of some feedback loop is going to come back and is going to create something unwanted for me. How can you, what advice can they have to just kind of make them relax in the process and go, it's okay. This is just all part of
Like I
learning.
said, it's all part of the
Yeah.
game. You know,
Yeah.
it's all part of learning.
Mm,
There's no judgment. And I
mm,
think that's really, really important. It's like when you really come into the understanding of how creation works, even to a basic level, because I am not saying I am any kind of expert. I'm not sure anyone is yet, you
yeah.
know. We're all figuring this out, yeah, we're all discovering. Um, but even if we were just to look at universal law, for example, and coherence
Mm,
and embodiment rather than floating around up in the clouds type thing, even if we were just to focus on those things, we do very, very quickly begin to understand that there's not really any way to really get it wrong. Like there's
yeah.
gold in everything, there's a learning in everything. And, you know, I used to always say when I was really going through part of my journey, please don't blame yourself for
Yeah.
not knowing what you didn't know when you didn't know it. Like, where is the sense in that? You know, it's like, you know now, that's fine. You can now readjust. You can now realign. You have an opportunity to realign now. Please don't judge yourself for getting it wrong. It wasn't about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about learning.
Yeah.
It was about lessons. It was about remembering. And it's like now you're in more awareness. Because honestly, I would say it's so difficult to put a percentage, but I would almost go as far to say is that 98% of everything that we have done, all of us, no one's exempt,
Yeah.
90% of everything that we've done has been not in alignment with universal law.
So
So,
what is universal law? For our listeners who are saying, what's she going on about
yeah,
universal law?
yeah.
What can you explain what that is briefly?
I mean, I guess if you think about creation, so, you know, we are all creators, yeah? We are, again, like I said, if we can remember our body as being a divine technology, it's designed to send and receive data, information, but also from that information, from what we hold, from what we believe, from our unique designs, we then project our own version of creation through us.
Like our perception.
Well, our full creation, everything you see, everything that you're witnessing right now, you're creating through you.
Yeah.
Eh? But also the more programming and conditions we've got, it kind of like looks energetically like you've got these like layers of program around you, which interferes with the signals coming in and out. So then things become distorted. So a quick example of that is I believe I'm not good enough. Someone's giving me a compliment. It's going through my filtering systems. If I'm not good enough, I'm completely dismissing that compliment and reaffirming that I'm not good enough
Yeah.
because
Looking for that proof of our limiting
yeah,
belief.
yeah,
Yeah.
and feeling anxious and uncomfortable and almost like, you know, I don't even want to speak to this person that's trying to compliment me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a very brief example, but it's reality creation. So the reason why I'm saying this is because Universal law is basically a set of principles, if you like, that help us understand the laws of creation. So it's not law as in the way that we see laws, of the land.
Like
It's
rules.
more like creational law. It's a set of fundamental principles that help us understand how we create. And if we're in alignment to universal law, we are in alignment to sovereignty, our
Mm.
own sovereignty. We are in fully reconnected back into the unified field, the field of oneness. Every single time we come out of alignment with the creational rules, we create an offshoot from the organic field, a program. And then we have to consciously go in and loop around in that program until we realize we've created it. And then we dismantle it, and then we can hopefully realign again back into a more organic field. So it's a really, really lovely guideline. And I personally like look at the 12 universal laws. There's lots of different examples of universal law. Even that's not set in stone, yeah. But I like the 12 because even though they first appear to be overlapping, or a continuation, if you like, from one to the next, I feel like they really give you a really good understanding of all the different little aspects of creation and
And
what
would
you.
you say that this, sorry to interrupt you there, but
It's
would you
okay.
say that this really links into, because some of the things that you'd be saying sounds very similar to kind of law of attraction, that what we create is our reality and karma and our energy, and what we're putting out there is what we're getting back. So even if we're asking for something to be a certain way, if we're not lining up energetically with that, then that's not going to come into our reality. Is that similar?
I
Because
mean, the
obviously there's a
law,
lot of people that are aware of law of attraction. I just wanted to
absolutely.
make it
The
kind of
law of
similarity.
attraction is a universal law. It's one of
Okay.
the 12. The
Yeah.
problem is, and I think we've all studied the law of attraction, yeah. The problem with the law of attraction is that it doesn't go deep enough
Mm.
into the real true understanding of how we're creating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I know that a lot of people, including myself, have probably wasted years and years of their life trying to manifest, and then we wonder why we continuously keep looping round
Mm.
in the same stuff that we can't seem to move past. And it's because, and this is becoming much more well known now, the full system
Mm.
is the sender and receiver. Yeah, the thoughts that we have are actually sending the signals to what then the body then, responds or reacts to. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that signal gets sent out, the full signal. And also when we talk about coming into more awareness, you probably remember I used to bring this into my hypnotherapy practitioner training is most human beings are in autopilot or
Mm.
unconscious, like 96 to 98% of the time. So if you're unconscious 98% of the time, 98% of the time, you're unconsciously sending the frequencies out that you're then repeating
Yeah.
again. So you can try to manifest all you want within that little 3% of consciousness. I think the 96% or whatever that percentage is definitely a much bigger proportion of what you're sending out, you
Yeah.
know. So this is why becoming aware
Mm.
is really, really important. Understanding coherence, understanding actually the true fundamentals of creation. Because in that, then you can begin to stop sending the wrong signals out because you're aware. You're in your
Yeah.
body, you're aware of what your body's doing, you're aware when your body's shooting off anxiety or, something else, and
Fight
you
or flight or
can,
stepping into that protective
yeah,
mode, which is why it's so important to do that shadow work in your course, I imagine too, because you're having
absolutely.
to go into those unseen parts, to that almost the inner child, and say, okay, you created this certain persona of you, like a people pleasing persona. It doesn't have to necessarily be a bad one, but just one that's not going to serve you if you're running around trying to please other people. and even seeing that in others and that mirroring onto you, and rather than blaming it on them externally, going inside and going, hang on, where am I doing that exactly, and being really honest and going into that shadow work around, releasing that part of you to go, it's okay, it's safe to not have to please people all the time or to be what people want you to be, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on so many levels,
Mm,
even when you have like done a lot of deep healing, we still have to be aware of what our body
yeah.
is emanating in any given moment. So, I might have done like years of healing, but there'll still be days when I'll wake up and I'm like, what's going on in my system?
Mm,
Why is there a kind of a feeling of unease? And this is where I feel like it's really important that we understand ways in which we can, connect to ourselves, maybe move the energy, regulate the nervous system, whatever that might be. There's lots and lots of tools, but again, it's very individual. Individual people have their own methods, if you like. But it is important to develop the self-awareness, to get into practice of how you personally release, um, being more aware of, all aspects of yourself, and being the embodiment part, being in your body, meaning that where your body's at and what it is sending out
yeah.
to the quantum fields. Because right now, even in this moment, every single moment, we're rendering on the fly. Yeah. And so the next moment's not been created yet until we create it, and it's coming from the full system, not
And
just the.
it's about doing the work as well, isn't it? We're not saying that you have to be perfect and have gone through all your layers in order to facilitate a breathwork session or anything like that. It's just being aware of our own patterns and working through those to be able to hold the space for people to be able to do the same, and letting it be their own process, not us trying to force something on them because our ego is getting in the way, thinking, I can heal that person. Even if, and I'm not saying that in a egotistical, they think they're everything. It can come from a really kind of almost like, I don't want to say naive because it sounds awful, but that kind of place where you're just trying to help people. So many people that are out there just trying to rescue people, fix people, help people, not realizing that within doing that they're taking that person's sovereignty away. It's up to that person. They've got to learn the lessons. You can't. It's great to say, oh, this worked for me, that's great, and that might help that person, but at the same time, what works for you doesn't always work for others. And sometimes it's a way of them being able to find that themselves, and you're just guiding them through it, which is what I imagine you're doing in this course as well.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, it's very important to me, as you know,
Mm,
to really, really, really understand the boundaries of infringing on someone else's sovereignty.
mm,
Um, and again, as I mentioned before, we're not judging anyone here. It's not about that. We're all learning. We all have to learn. But I guess from my perspective, the way that I personally feel is that a great facilitator is someone that simply holds the space to allow,
yeah.
so they create the environment, they create the space to allow that individual to have the safety of the space
Yes.
and the safety or the reassurance of the experienced facilitator to be able to move through their own deep processes. Yeah.
Yes.
And that makes a really, really good facilitator. And so that is definitely something that we deeply explore as part of the training. Sort of, when do we stand back and when do we step in?
Yeah.
Do you know
Yeah.
the difference?
Exactly. It's so important to know that difference, isn't it? Rather than the ego trying to come in. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but when we can just try and suddenly rescue, fix, and all of that, and
Yeah.
recognize when there's part of us that wants to do that because we want to help or we want to rescue for a reason because it makes us feel good and all of these things. It's not that it's wrong, but it's just being aware of what's going on in those processes,
Yeah.
and to differentiate the two, to let that
Yeah.
person heal of their own accord, really, and just be the guide.
It makes me laugh, mate, because I remember when I first became a hypnotherapist, like all those years ago, there wasn't one person that I spoke to back then that I was trying to convince to come and have therapy with me. So, yeah, I do remember it was like, I thought what I was doing was so amazing. The results were so amazing. I just wanted everyone to do it. But again, all of us 20 years ago, we were just in a completely different place then.
Yeah.
Now.
And some aren't ready for it. It's like they're leading the horse to water, but you can't make them
Absolutely.
drink it.
I
Some
don't
people
try
just
to
aren't quite
convince
ready.
I don't try to convince anyone of anything really anymore.
And also, I say being ready as well. It's not about, oh, you're not ready. Like that's a bad thing. Some people just aren't meant to, it's just on their journey. They're not meant to go down that line, you know? They're supposed to experience something else or something later on
Absolutely.
is a different path, you know?
Absolutely. It's like, as you know, part of my journey was plant medicine. And,
Yeah.
it's because of the plant medicine and how deeply I went in that a lot of this stuff was kind of made clearer to me. So I could
Mm,
see the difference between a space that was not really secure quantum space, that hadn't been kind of created from the right place, let's say.
yeah.
Not that it was dangerous in any way, but I could just energetically, very, very clearly see the difference to creating these quantum spaces. And it was literally like, oh my goodness, I think I'm in heaven. The types of things that you were seeing and interacting with in these more kind of divine spaces, if you like. Um, but again, it's like the plant medicine. I would never promote it because it's not for everyone. It's not
Mm,
everybody's route.
mm.
Some people, they dedicate their entire lives to teaching, the power of plant medicine, and it is absolutely amazing. But we're all on our own very individualized, pathways. Every single one of us is a master being
Yeah.
in our own
Yeah.
right. Our souls have chosen this for us, and again, even the reasons for that could be many.
Yeah.
Some people are here for the big awakening. Some people are here to be the baddies. Some people are here to be the goodies.
Yeah.
Some people might exit before the big event. Like who
Yeah.
knows? Um,
Yeah.
everybody's here for something different, and I think that's what's beautiful about life and
Mm.
beautiful about coming into more sovereignty is when you can sit back for a second and go, wow, there are literally billions of universes, all unique, all simultaneously playing out
Yeah.
on this planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every single one completely unique.
Yeah.
And I think that when we can remember that, we can begin to fine tune our own universe.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's what it's about.
And I can completely vouch for all of your work and especially the quantum space holding because I noticed in the soundbars that I'm running, it's part of my quantum singing as well. Obviously, it's such a big part of that because I just noticed that and even in my hypnotherapy sessions as well, is it really helps the individual who is in this process or with a client. It really helps to kind of 10x or more their healing process as well. When you setting up these really safe sacred containers, people are so much more open to receive and therefore open to doing the healing, which isn't, by the way, us doing the healing on them, it's them doing the healing on themselves, but setting up that space. It can't be overvalued enough, because that is where the work is. I think more than anything, that is the most important thing. And I've certainly seen a massive shift in my sessions using all of your methods. So for somebody listening today, what is the one practice that they could start doing whilst they're leading a circle or event, say this week, to upgrade how they hold space? What's the one thing that they could do to help how they hold space?
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. It's the Heart-Brain Coherence.
Yeah.
You know, even just coming into coherence, a coherence field and a programmed field or a chaotic field, they're not compatible.
Yeah.
The
So what is a
coherence,
heart-brain coherence?
I mean, the heart-brain coherence is basically the understanding of that. And again, this is an embodiment thing.
Mm,
Yeah, so it's about creating coherence through our bodies, through our hearts, and aligning and synchronizing, the brain to the heart. Yeah. Now, many people know this now. It's sort of becoming much more common knowledge that
mm,
we've very much been living in a world and society, education system, everything else where we've been taught that this is the intelligence, that this is the most important part of the system. But actually, it's now becoming much, much, much more widespread, known that actually it's this
mm,
that is the intelligence. And so this plays a massive role.
mm,
So what we're doing with the heart-brain coherence is we are re-establishing the natural connection between the heart and the brain. So a lot of people are quite closed down in their
mm,
hearts. And so when you're operating from the brain only, you're operating from very largely logical, your beliefs, your conditions, very linear and thinking, A to B, if you like. And because a lot of our programming is very conditional,
and
we can be very
fear-based sometimes too.
fear-based. We can be very limited if we're operating just up here. When we begin to reconnect the heart and the brain, the heart is not linear. The heart is multidimensional. And the heart is intelligence, but it's a quieter intelligence.
Mm,
It's a more of a knowing, an intuition. And so this is another reason why, we need to maybe learn to quieten the chitter chatter sometimes
yeah.
and being in the body, because then we can begin to feel what the heart intelligence knows.
Mm,
Yeah. And we can only really do that when we're in coherence
mm,
and presence and not all up here like busy, busy, busy. Um, but if you're holding a space and you just simply guide a group to come into coherence,
mm,
that in itself makes all the difference, because each individual's higher consciousness can only be truly connected to through the coherence field.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
and
of
that's
us
their
are,
own field. That's not one that the facilitator is setting up. That's their
yeah,
own
that's your
field.
own, that's your
Yeah.
own field, your own sovereign field. We all have that.
Mm,
That is our birthright. We were born with it. The only difference is because we've attached so much to the program and the ego, the
mm,
conditions, the personas, we have forgotten. It's still
yeah.
there waiting for us whenever we realign. It's like a tuning fork. It's just
Yeah.
still frequency. So the moment we can learn and remember how to realign, everything shifts for us. And that is one of the most fundamental aspects, I would say, of all of it.
And of your
Awakening,
course.
evolution, the courses that I do. Yeah, absolutely, because it's so important.
And so, first of all, just want to say thank you so, so much for being here today. It has just been an absolute honor. And for those of you who are listening, we really got up early on a Sunday morning to do this. This is how passionate we are about it. Donna's been up since 5. I've been up from 7. Sunday morning.
I
Let's
know.
run a podcast about quantum space holding.
Crazy, crazy.
Yeah. So
Probably
if
need to go back to
somebody,
bed now.
yeah. So if somebody wants to find out more about your course, I hear that you're holding kind of discovery calls and open evenings and taster sessions. Where
Yeah.
can people find out more?
Yeah, I understand that people probably do want to have a chat and
Mm,
explore. So, again, it's as we were saying, this isn't for everyone, but I'll always have the time and space to have a discovery call with someone to give them
mm,
more information. That way, they're fully informed as
yeah.
to whether it feels like the right thing for them or
Yeah.
not. And I'm going to probably hold a few kind of Zoom open evenings. Again, just as a way of people just kind of feeling in, maybe getting a little taster and asking the questions that need to be asked. I'm based in Cornwall, so my plan is to do a live, so a face-to-face in-person training course. That will be 1 day a month. But simultaneously, I will also be running an online course, because I do have people that want to do it that aren't local to Cornwall, and that way I can, it's nice to do the training live, but it's also nice to be able to offer it out as well to people that can't come live. So yeah, so there's two.
Amazing. It's so great, isn't it, that we have that technology now as well. So it's great that you can send this amazing work
Yeah,
literally out beyond, Cornwall and beyond, but out to the world, because I think it's such important work.
yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Donna. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we're going to have you on again soon to talk about it more, because as you and I know, we've known each other
Oh
for
my
so long now, like
goodness,
the evolution is
we could
changing all the time, so
we
I
could
think it's
take
just
one
fascinating.
snippet of something, and yeah, we've got a podcast for sure.
Yeah,
There's not enough time to really go into it all, is there? But yeah, I'd love to connect again soon and do another chat, and maybe about something more specific, that we can dive right into deeply.
brilliant. Thank you so much. And there'll be all of Donna's contact information and everything in the show notes as well. So please go to the show notes on whatever podcast you are listening to, and they will be there. I will also put something in the show notes on my website, which is www.elavida.com. And I will put links to Donna's website on there as well, so that you have all of her information. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast today, and we hope to see you next time. But till then, big love, blessings, and peace.